is March 17th, 2011, and we are interviewing Harold Geisinger at the Communications Center at Buena Vista University. Mr. Geisinger was born on December 24th, 1925. My name is Zoey Reisdorf, and I will be interviewing along with Lindsey Peterson. What were you doing before you entered the service?
At that time, it was a draft. And everybody wanted to go.
What year were you drafted?
44.
Were you in school before you got drafted?
I was in high school. The teachers knew I was being drafted, and 3 of them got me deferred, which I did before I knew it, so I could finish high school.
Where were you when you heard about the bombing of Pearl Harbor?
Where? No.
Where were you when you heard about the bombing of Pearl Harbor?
Well, we just moved into a house. Well, we just moved into we built a house. My folks did. I was coming upstairs where the radio was, and I heard the report on the radio.
How did you react towards it?
Well, I'll probably be there sometime. I think I was probably was a freshman in high school at that time.
What do you remember after Pearl Harbor?
Where I was.
What do you remember after Pearl Harbor? Like how, like the cries for war and.
Well, we followed it very closely, but everybody got to work. I mean, we were working anyway. I'd go to school and go home and work.
When you were drafted, how did you feel? Did you want to be drafted or not?
At that time, yes.
What branch of service were you in?
Army.
Where did you have your boot camp or your training experiences at?
I took the basic training in Little Rock, Arkansas. Joseph T. Robinson.
Do you remember anything specific about training, how that was?
Well, basic training, they beat you down so you were a nobody, and then you get built up.
How long did your training last?
17 weeks.
How did you feel about your training? Did you think it was hard?
I didn't. Before I left for service, I shocked oaths for 3 days. So I was ready to go anyway. But a lot of the people from all the mountains of Kentucky and Tennessee, we had a bunch of them there. A lot of them from the East Coast. And they took the heat pretty bad in Arkansas in August. But it was kind of like being home.
Where did you go after training, or what happened after training?
I came home. I was home on Christmas Day. Well, I mean, first part of December. I left Christmas Day on the train and went to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. I can't remember what camp it was. Reported there. We were supposed to be there for 2 weeks. I was there overnight. And they shipped us to, I think it was New Year's Eve. We went with a troop train to Miles Standish, which is outside of Boston. We were supposed to be there for 2 weeks. We got off the train onto the boat directly. So January 2nd, I was at sea.
What was being on the boat like?
Cramped. It was a converted cargo boat. You wanted the top shelf of bunks. That way nobody could sit on it. and nobody got seasick above you.
What did you do to pass your time on the boat?
Oh, they had exercises, and they had, wait in line to go eat. You didn't do much, you just sat there. And they'd have physicals, and you could take a shower with salt water soap, which was fine as long as you were wet. When you dried off, you were crusty.
Where were you heading?
Le Havre, France.
Do you remember much about France?
Well, we were supposed to stop in that camp for 2 weeks. We got off the boat onto boxcars and headed east. In the middle of January, it was cold. A lot of feet were frozen. So you just lived in that boxcar till you might be sitting on siding or you might be traveling. And I don't know, we stopped somewhere in Belgium or Holland, I don't know where.
Did you hear about the events of D-Day?
Well, D-Day I was still at home D-Day, but all through training we had up-to-date reports of it.
What was your reaction towards that?
Really not much reaction. We were in training, we were going to be there, and we were all ready to go, we thought.
Where exactly did you serve during the war?
Pardon?
Where did you serve during the war? Was it Germany or?
Well, it was in Holland, Germany, Austria.
Did you ever have any special jobs or special duties?
Well, what little I was I was assigned to the 83rd Division, and they asked for volunteers. That's an Army no, you do not volunteer. So they asked again. I said, what do I have to carry? They said, a carbine. I'll take it. So I got in the weapons platoon. So I was a mortarman.
Did you have a mortar team? Like you and a few other guys?
Yeah, you're always in a squad. The Army setup is each company has 3 infantry platoons and a weapons platoon, which is divided between half machine guns and half mortars. And that's what I was assigned to. But the day I joined the division, they were just coming off of a line in Luxembourg. So they were trying to get more cannon fodder, and that was me. And they did some training in the Ardennes and in all that snow that they had that winter. And I was coughing constantly. So I finally put off till the middle of February, going to the sick hall. And at that point, I did go in. It turned out as February 14th, excuse me. And they put me in an ambulance, took me to Liège, Belgium, which was, I don't know whether I slept or what, but put me in an airplane and flew me to Paris overnight, then to London, then on a troop hospital train to southwest England. It's a good thing I was out of there because they could not have, I would have been coughing when they're trying to be quiet. So I'd have given their positions away no matter what I tried to do or not do. So I was there for 2 months. Coming back on the ferry back to Le Havre, I got to the original outfit and met up with the guys that they had come back out of Eastern Germany, or the outfit got across the Elbe River, and nobody told them not to go any farther, so they kept on going. So they got about 30, 35 kilometers beyond the Elbe before they had to back up and get out of that area, which actually was the Russian zone.
Were you on the front lines before you left in February?
No, we were back in recuperating. The division was recuperating, so I actually never got to the lines at all.
Did you ever see combat at all?
I didn't see it. I could hear it. I was that close, but I finally went on sick call. I didn't want to. I put it off for a month. So they got me out of there.
Can you tell us about any of your memorable memories or experiences?
Well, at that time I was only 19 and I didn't know anything about the country anyway. So I didn't know enough about it. I just enjoyed being where I was. Well, enjoyed is kind of questionable, but we were there, and we ended up in Austria. Or no, first we were in southern Bavaria, which was the U.S. zone. The northeast being Russian, the northeast was British, and the southwest was French. So then I was on the German-Czechoslovakian border, little town of Eisenstein. Mark Eisenstein is on the German side, Barish Eisenstein is on the German side, Mark Eisenstein is on the Czech side. So we worked with the Czech soldiers who didn't like us. They were in training all the time during the war, and then came back after the war was over, and they said they could have won it anyway, just give them time. So they didn't like us being there. But naturally, if you're in the Army, you have to stand inspection, so they wanted pressed uniforms. I tried an iron with a bill of fire in it. I didn't have charcoal. So I made a deal with the Czech soldiers to borrow their iron one day a week. They got, I don't remember if it was one pack of cigarettes or a carton. So I pressed that uniform one day and did everything else we had to do the rest of the time.
How are your relations with the locals? And how are your relations with the locals at the different places that you've been during the war?
I think very good. They were glad to have a change of government. I don't remember any trouble with any locals. The biggest trouble was the new recruits that came over after the war was over. And one young fellow from Massachusetts, I think, saw a German walking across the field and he shot him. I don't know yet how I got the job of hauling him to the jail. And I don't remember now where I was, but I took him and asked him why he did it. He didn't know. They dumped him off where I was supposed to and went back, and I have no idea whatever happened to him. But that was the only trouble we ever had.
How did you stay in touch with your family and friends back home?
How did I
stay in touch with them, your family?
Well, the first 3 months they sent me off to the hospital so quick, I never got mail for between 3 and 4 months. I got 4 pounds from the Red Cross, which is $12. So they took that out of my paycheck, so they got paid back. But other than that, then the mail started catching up to where I was. Then eventually I got back to the outfit, and then everything came. Better late than never.
How were you able to entertain yourself, you and your buddies in your unit, in your division?
As I remember, there was no problem at all. We just, you're cleaning your weapons for one thing, even after the war was over with. And eventually they sent the division to the Nuremberg training ground, which was a German army training ground. And there we were in training to be shipped to China, Burma, India theater. One shipment had already gone. And we were scheduled to be the next shipment. They left out of Marseille and they probably went through the Suez. And the war in Japan was over with while we were out on that training area. We got the news and we just sat down. No shouting, no jumping up and down or anything. Just thank God it's over.
Do you recall any humorous or unusual events that happened while you were away?
Well, I can't think of anything that's unusual. I was close to Salzburg for a while. And in fact, when the Salzburg Music Festival was coming on just before I left of January or June of 45. And before that, some of us had borrowed a vehicle. We toured a little bit of Austria, the Tyrol area. Pretty country, but it was winter. And of course, we got up to the Hitler's home at, now I can't think of the town, just south of Salzburg anyway. So that was, well, they had to put the 3/4 ton truck in low gear to get up the hill. And of course, the Eagle's Nest was off limits. Of course, it was blocked in with snow anyway, so.
What else can you tell us about seeing Hitler's home?
When I thought it was all bombed out, he had a beautiful view of the valley. Birch's Garden was a town, but it was, now I was back there several years later, and it's a big resort area now. I had quite a job to remember where the SS barracks were and his home was, because it's all part of this new complex. But I could pick it out. So.
You mentioned that you were in Holland and Germany and Austria. What was your favorite place to visit?
I don't know if I had a special place, because we were doing something different. Belgium I just went through. Holland, we had just gotten off the boat, and the division had just come back from Luxembourg, and we all got to go to Maastricht and take showers. Get that salt off of us. That's probably the best time. But they were all interesting, and the people basically are like we are. They were glad to have it over with too.
You said you went back and visited Germany and Austria. Where'd you go? How was it being back?
Well, I got in the traffic jam at Passau, so I didn't get the road I wanted. But in Passau, up on a hill, there was a castle, which was a division, either a division or a regimental rest area after the war. And so I had been up to there. Well, you walk around behind it and look down, and here you have the three rivers, the Inns and the Elz and the Danube. And that's quite a sight, because they're all different color. But so I was going to try and get back there then, but the traffic was jammed. I couldn't cross it. So I ended up going through the Russian section, which I'd never been through before, because I was on the other side of the river. But to back up a little bit, after the war, we were in a little town of Oshak. The Russians on one side of the river, and we were on the other side. You didn't dare go across that bridge in the daytime without fear of being held up for a few days or a month. You didn't know. But I was on guard one night with another fellow way out of town. We had rifles, but they had taken the ammunition away from us. So here's a little rowboat, which is tied to a cable, which is tied with a roller on a cable going across the Danube River. And we knew the Russians were on the other side. We went over to see what was going on. Well, here was a little Russian on that side. He was just a little fella. And we'd all picked up enough German we could communicate. He was 19, same as I was, but he was real small. But the sergeant took us up. We drank beer with him. We asked him what he needed. We had, the other fellow and I, neither one of us smoked. So we had cigarettes, not with us, but if he wanted any. No, he didn't want cigarettes. He wanted American uniforms. We didn't have any. So we talked back and forth, and finally we went back to the river, or the little canoe, and guided ourselves back across, and they didn't try and hold us or anything. But they didn't want to be where people could see you.
Did you say you had a rifle without ammunition?
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Somebody must have got trigger happy somewhere. I don't know. The war was over, supposedly, so.
What else do you remember about your days over in Germany?
I really don't. Specifically, it's kind of hard to pick out anything. It was interesting. I had a German truck. I went to Lindsey. I was getting PX supplies for the battalion. So I'd go there and pick up beer and American liquor for the officers, and a barrel of vermouth for everybody else. Take it back and put the barrel of contents into bottles. And that German truck, nobody would work on it. It was a 6-cylinder, but only about 4.5 cylinders worked. But that was a pretty good run.
How was your interactions with the others in your division?
Pardon?
How were your interactions with the others in your division?
Well, when I had this job after the war, I had to have a generator and take movies out to the rest of the battalion. And the reaction was fine. I mean, everybody got along fine. They had their spot, and of course, every one of them was the best outfit. All you had to do was ask them. And it turned out this Ralph Nappa was a Medal of Honor winner. He's in the hall of the forum. It turned out he was in the same battalion I was. I knew him after when he was going to school. I never asked him where he was in service. I didn't know he'd lost both legs until I had chickens and I was selling him eggs for the American Legion Club he was running. He went through a lot of hard-boiled eggs and beer, I know. So, but anyway, when he asked me to put these eggs in his trunk, that's the first I knew he had 2 artificial legs. But he was in I was in the 3rd Battalion, which is IJK, one of those is K, L, and M, I think. He was at M, which is a heavy weapons company. And that's why he was in water-cooled machine guns. So I really never got to visit with him where we were. I didn't know it. He didn't ask. We were all glad to be home. We knew everybody had been in service. Everybody went somewhere different, so why worry about it?
When did you get released to come home?
About the middle of July of 46.
What was your reaction when you found out that you were coming home?
Well, glad to go. A lot of our buddies along the way had been shipped out. They would ship you as you got enough points to go. I was kind of low in the totem pole. So the ones I knew had already gone. I was shipped to another outfit, just a place to park me. That's what it was. So I was a company clerk on that outfit. So I made a few mistakes. I had a list. Letters come through with this address, send them back, KIA. Turned out they weren't all KIA. But I had no way of knowing.
What's the first thing you did when you got back?
Went to work, combining. It was work at home, though. I went home, and my brother went to Iowa State, so.
Did you farm after the war? What did you do after the war?
Yeah, I'm farming all my life.
How did you feel when you heard about Germany surrendering?
Germany surrender? Well, I was on the ferry before. We hadn't landed at Lahore, but I was on the ferry when we got the word. Well, we knew it was coming. They were beat before they quit. But Admiral Donitz, I believe it was, that took over. And the Germans that I knew, they were glad to quit too. Incidentally, in that winter, they had forgot to order overshoes. So we had leather boots. Got cold.
Of all the things you or your unit did during the war, what are you most proud of?
I missed it.
Of all the things that you and your unit has done during the war, what were you most proud of?
Well, I think we're all proud of being there and doing what we can to get it over with. Of course, I came in later. The Battle of the Bulge was over with. And of course, then when I went to service, shortly after that, they went across the Rhine. I think the division went across the Remagen Bridge. And in the process, one of the fellows that I took basic with was hit with a shell and it blew him up. But that happened everywhere. You get real fatalistic when you go to service. If you get through it, fine. If you don't, too bad. So they raced the infantry division and raced the 2nd Armored across Germany, and the infantry division beat them. They took trucks or motorcycles, anything that would go. That's what they rode in. And the kitchen had the fastest vehicle. So they always had hot coffee. And they'd pull up beside you and throw K rations in, or usually K, as opposed to the C rations, but they were easier to handle. Anyway, but when it was over with, well, an interesting feature, my squad leader, of course I wasn't there, but he told me about it. He opened the door to a cellar in Zerbst, which is on the east side of the Elbe. And here was a fellow down there, a big beard, a rifle pointing at him, so he fired. What he saw was a mirror and didn't recognize himself. And I've kept in touch with a lot of those fellows. The last reunion I went to, there was 2 of us. And I picked him up in Indiana. So there's only 3 of us that I know about that are left.
Well, I think that's all that we have for you. Is there anything else that you would like to share?
I'm a firm believer that I wish we had the draft back, not for war, but for the training.